The following episode can be viewed on the YouTube channel Bernie or Bust Television.
Good morning, USA, and welcome to another episode of the Bernie or Bust Show. On yesterday's show, we were talking about Chris Matthews and how he's losing it because he figures he's going to lose his job. We'll show an apology from Chris Matthews later on in the show today. It may make your jaw drop. We will also lampoon Chuck Todd and others, but before we do that, we should understand that pundits are part of the problem, but they're not the problem. It's probably even fair to say that the punditry is a third political party. We've advanced that idea before. So that group of people is obviously powerful, but what we need to understand is that hideous strength above them is what we're all fighting. And it may turn out that some of the pundits come around to our side. It's looking that way now. But if that happens, we should always remember Maya Angelou's advice. If someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Chris Matthews and Chuck Todd are sociopaths. And they may be trying to get back into our good graces when they see that the Bernie train has left the station. But we should always remember what sycophants look like and that they are part of that group. We should remember that they're willing to sell themselves and us too for the sake of a cushy job and nice parties and people hanging on their every word. Going forward, I can picture Bernie being very forgiving and accommodating and allowing everyone into the tent, and that all sounds great. But I don't think we should forget who the enemies have been, especially in the pundit class. I think we should make a list now before they all try to suck up to the new power. Personally, I have quite a bit of experience with charming sociopaths, and once you have enough power for them to stop bullying you, then they change their tune, but they don't change who they are inside. I don't believe. The latest hullabaloo on Twitter has Anderson Cooper attempting to smear Bernie over the Fidel Castro Cuba comments he made in the past. We should include Anderson Cooper in our list of Hollywood-influenced thought leaders, talent agency-influenced thought leaders. The hullabaloo on Twitter yesterday, I think, started with Anderson Cooper. We had smears of Bernie because he has praised Castro and Cuba for education and healthcare. Bernie cares about education and healthcare, and he's told the truth the way Barack Obama did earlier about their progress. But the centrist machine can't handle this surging of Bernie, and so this is what they do. The reason I think this is coming out is because Super Tuesday is coming, and they feel desperate to do almost anything to stop Bernie. So if Russia smears don't work, then let's try Castro smears.
Tuesday, 8 days from now, if he isn't slowed down, Bernie Sanders could effectively run away with the nomination and he would be almost impossible to catch. And so what they've latched onto, and I'm not joking here, is Fidel Castro and Cuba. That's what they think is going to take Bernie down. It's laughable. I'm going to play you a clip of Bernie Sanders talking to Anderson Cooper last night on 60 Minutes.
Opposed to the authoritarian nature of Cuba. But it's unfair to simply say everything is bad. When Fidel Castro came into office, you know what he did? He had a massive literacy program. Is that a bad thing? Even though Fidel Castro did it?
There's a lot of dissidents imprisoned in Cuba.
That's right, and we condemn that. Unlike Donald Trump, let's be clear, I do not think that Kim Jong-un is a good friend. Vladimir Putin, not a great friend of mine.
So what you just saw there was Bernie Sanders effectively saying that it would be unfair and inaccurate to 100% condemn Castro and the Cuban regime.
So that's Christo Aivalis, and he makes a good point. And you can just see it's the machinery grasping at straws. The Clinton machine, the DNC, third way, astroturfing garbage that we've seen all along. They're getting desperate ahead of Super Tuesday. So look for them to try to label Bernie as a Russian asset. Look for them to throw in the kitchen sink, whatever it is. They're going to try to do anything to stop Bernie's momentum. Some of the pushback to this criticism is on Twitter, and they're reminding us that Barack Obama said almost exactly the same things quite recently.
And I said this to President Castro in Cuba. I said, look, you've made great progress in educating young people. Every child in Cuba gets a basic education. That's a huge improvement from where it was. Medical care. the life expectancy of Cubans is equivalent to the United States, despite it being a very poor country, because they have access to healthcare. That's a huge achievement. They should be congratulated. But you drive around Havana and this economy is not working. It looks like it did in the 1950s. And so you have to be practical in asking yourself, how can you achieve the goals of equality and inclusion?
It almost sounds like he's trying to help Cuba do better. Kyle Kalinske on Twitter said, Cuba came up with a lung cancer vaccine. Are we not allowed to say this is good because all things Cuba have to be bad? This is corporate media's insane standard that they're using on Bernie. So desperate and sad. The penultimate examiner said, Bernie made reasonable statements about Cuba and Palestine, and now the neoliberal Twitter is having a meltdown. This should show us how much they love to engage in bad faith argumentation. I think it's starting to dawn on the Twitterverse that these pundits just want to keep their jobs and they're going to do anything possible. The sad, sick part is all of the sycophants on Twitter that just go right along with the third way neoliberal Center for American Progress way of thinking. And as soon as the play comes out of the playbook, all of these little bitches just start jumping on it with the third way people. And they start backing them up. It's like an army of sycophant evil people. I'd like to think better of my fellow Americans and other people in the Twitterverse from other countries. I'd like to think better of them. But you see them, they just come in and they start repeating these points verbatim. And without any thought, they just start repeating these points verbatim. It looks like people repeating things from Fox News. It's just the same. Without thought, without your own processing of what's going on, you're just a little puppet. You're just repeating things and you're doing their bidding. Manufactured consent works on little people who won't think for themselves. Now here's some truth from Kyle Kalinske that the third way people really, really don't want to hear, because this is the coffin nail. Bernie is dominating in the Rust Belt. Bernie or Trump voters, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, gave Trump the election last time and denied Hillary last time. And Bernie is dominating all of the other candidates in the Rust Belt. This is very important information.
The good news keeps rolling in. I'm not playing around, y'all. The good news keeps rolling in. So as you heard me say before, if Bernie Sanders wins South Carolina, it's over. As in, it won't be a plurality, he's going to win a majority, and there's nothing the Democratic establishment can do to stop us. In fact, I don't want to say this because I personally don't think it's true yet, but there's an argument that it's already over. Why? Because no candidate on the Democratic or Republican side in American history has ever won the first three contests, the popular vote in the first three contests. So we could already be at that point, but no, don't believe that, don't think that, don't say that. I don't think it's true yet. I think if Biden wins South Carolina, then there's a slight door that's open for, the result to be changed.
What he's not saying is that the odds are still pretty long for Bernie to win outright. The odds are actually higher that it will be a brokered convention than that Bernie will get 50% plus one.
You win South Carolina, game, set, match, son. It's over. So that's the good news. Now, we have some new polls. This is from UW-Madison Elections Research Center. And these polls are specifically in Rust Belt states, swing states. This is Bernie Sanders' path to victory. Dog, Bernie could win Texas. He could win Texas. And he just had a rally there the other day, and it was gigantic. You would never imagine a Democrat could get these kind of numbers in Texas. So, they might try to snag Texas, which is the whole ball game. If a Democrat wins Texas, wowzers. So they might go there. But the other important part is you got to win the Rust Belt, man. You have to win the Rust Belt. You just have to. So what are the polls showing in the Rust Belt right now in the primary? What's happening in the primary in the Rust Belt? Look, now this poll was done before Nevada, and he's going to get another bump after Nevada because he obliterated in Nevada.
Let me just show you these numbers in a better view. Michigan, Sanders 25, Biden 16. Wisconsin, Sanders 30, Biden 13. Pennsylvania, Sanders 25, Biden 20. I think we'll leave Kyle there and go on, but this is a key piece of information. This is huge. So you have to remember, if Bernie's winning in the Rust Belt, that's what gave it away last time. And if you've got people in the Rust Belt determined, so determined, that it's going to be Bernie or bust, or Bernie or Trump, for Christ's sake, this is something that we have to hold over everyone else. We have to show them, look, it can't be anybody but Bernie. Only Bernie is going to win in the Rust Belt, and therefore, that's how it goes. The Rust Belt is how the whole election goes in an electoral college scenario. Here's another dirty trick that's likely to be played before Super Tuesday, so keep alert. The CIA is behind it, and that's not a conspiracy theory. Max Blumenthal will show you clearly, and Aaron Mate also, that the CIA is behind Russiagate. The deep state is what Trump calls it, but the deep state it is. While I'm at it, the fact that the CIA doesn't want Bernie Sanders to win should also show us that we should never have anyone that they like as Bernie's vice president. We need a vice president who is at least as dangerous to the deep state as Bernie is. So no centrist, no moderate, no corporate shill should be allowed anywhere near the vice presidency, because that would make Bernie's life a lot more perilous. Anyway, here's what Max Blumenthal has to say about Russiagate.
I think it's actually more important for us to speak to Bernie's base right now, to speak to people who haven't been following this the same way we have, or who simply just took for granted that Trump might have been colluding with Russia. And in any case, Trump's a horrible, historically horrible, dangerous president. So if this takes him down, then fine. To begin to understand what the sources of our opposition were and what is wrong with this, they need to understand first that Russiagate was not just a confection of Hillary Clinton dead enders, but was a creation of the intelligence services, which is the most malignant component of the establishment they're constantly talking about, which Bernie says he's running against. The intelligence services is what Donald Trump and his people have been calling the deep state for the last 3 or 4 years. Bernie's base needs to understand the deep state is real. Maybe they don't like the term. I call it the national security state, but it's real. They need to understand that the deep state lies, cheats, and steals, as former CIA Director Mike Pompeo freely disclosed and boasted. They need to understand that its number one goal, its main goal, is the perpetuation of empire. And they need to understand that empire is the ultimate realization of oligarchy. Yeah. And so if they're against the oligarchy, they need to be against this opaque, unelected, malignant force embedded within the establishment, which is in fact, and this is the key point they need to understand, more dangerous than Donald Trump, because if Donald Trump loses in November, he will go away. But the deep state, the national security state, will still be with us, honeycombed inside a potential Bernie Sanders administration with deep hostility to him. And why are they doing this to him? Well, they're not just doing it to him to, undermine him and prevent him from being president. They're also preparing for a Bernie Sanders presidency, and they're doing this for the same reason that they did it to Trump, which is to box him into an anti-Russian position where he can't meet with Vladimir Putin, which every American president must do because Russia is one of the world's most powerful nations and a nuclear power, without being deemed a covert Russian asset, without being attacked. And so they're trying to break the important diplomacy down that needs to take place between the U.S. and Russia to step back from a nuclear war. Right. That's the other thing. Let's just say Russia it would be more content with a Bernie Sanders presidency than with a Trump presidency, where Trump has, after campaigning as a sort of sympathetic candidate who supports détente with Russia, basically been rolled by the most hardline elements of the national security state, broken vital treaties with Russia, enacted a coup against Venezuela, and so many other things. Let's just say that. Let's say they prefer Bernie. So what? What's wrong with that? What that simply means is they think it will be more possible to do diplomacy with him, which means it's less likely that the U.S. will go to war with Russia. It means it's less likely we'll see proxy wars in places like Ukraine, where people on both sides of the Donbass are suffering. It means it's less likely we'll see brutal sanctions on countries like Venezuela, which have killed tens of thousands of people, maybe more. So what's wrong with that?
What he also isn't saying, though, is that the industrial military complex is making buku bucks, and they don't want to stop the gravy train. So a lot of people within this honeycombed Central Intelligence Agency nestled within our government. So what needs to be said here is that the military-industrial complex is threatened by Bernie because their money supply is going to go down. Endless war is very profitable. And so Bernie Sanders is a threat to that, and they therefore have to, if they can't take him clear out and deny him the nomination or assassinate him, they have to cripple him so that he won't be able to have good relations with Russia. Because if we have good relations with Russia, that will cut down on the military-industrial complex business model. Now, I want to remind you of what Maya Angelou said. If somebody shows you who they are, believe them the first time. We need to remember who Chris Matthews is. We need to remember all of the things he's said recently about Bernie Sanders. But this little clip will show you how far he's willing to go to keep his job and to keep his influence. This is what suck-ups do.
So MSNBC's been on some real InfoWars type shit lately, fear-mongering about Bernie Sanders. Chris Matthews came under fire for comparing Bernie's landslide, crazy, unexpected victory in Nevada to the start of World War II, and compared his movement and the unlikely victory to the Nazis, which is bad because, Bernie is Jewish. Here, Chris Matthews is obviously being forced to, but he is apologizing.
Before getting into tonight's news, I want to say something quite important and personal. As I watched the one-sided results of Saturday's Democratic caucus in Nevada, I reached for an historical analogy and used a bad one. I was wrong to refer to an event from the last days, or actually the first days of World War II. Senator Sanders, I'm sorry for comparing anything from that tragic era in which so many suffered, especially the Jewish people, to an electoral result in which you were the well-deserved winner. This is going to be a hard-fought, heated campaign of ideas. In the days and weeks and months ahead, I will strive to do a better job myself of elevating the political discussion. Congratulations, by the way, to you, Senator Sanders, and to your supporters on a tremendous win down in Nevada.
So this is what's going on. The pundits, they're going to be scrambling like rats. They're going to try to figure out which ship isn't sinking, and that's the one they'll try to get on. Now, to go along with that really good news from the Rust Belt, that Bernie is crushing the other Democrats in the Rust Belt, let's hear from Dahlia Myers why she switched from Biden to Bernie. Dahlia is a centrist. She's not a progressive. She's a centrist. She's probably not quite as old as I am, but it's fair to call her an older black voter. And she's also a leader. And this is what she has to say about Bernie Sanders as compared to what a progressive might say. The reason I'm showing you this is because it's clear now that the moderates are figuring out that Bernie is the actual person who can defeat Donald Trump and not Joe Biden. And they're going to figure this out about Bloomberg too. They've watched Bloomberg in a debate. They've watched Bernie in a debate. They're about to watch these two again. And Biden again, and Warren again, and Buttigieg again, and Klobuchar again. And what they're going to figure out is Bernie is the one who can defeat Donald Trump. And Bernie is the only one who can defeat Donald Trump. Hashtag only Bernie beats Trump. That's trending on Twitter, despite Twitter's algorithm trying to stop it. Leave a comment if you want me to give you the website where you can prove that Twitter actively suppresses certain hashtags. Anyway, here's Dahlia Myers.
I initially was a Biden supporter because I believed that where we needed to be as a country was just away from all the drama, the chaos. It just became clear to me that the Biden campaign really was a throwback campaign to a different day. We're not in a genteel era. We have moved past that with the election of Donald Trump. We need a fighter. We need someone who is going to compel people to make a change, who is going to stand on a stage and say to Donald Trump, we all believe you to be a liar. We all believe you to be a misogynist. We don't believe you love America. We don't believe you love all the people in America. We don't believe you're fighting for everybody. My name's Dahlia Myers. I am a councilwoman on the Richland County Council. It is humbling to represent the people who raised me in the area where I grew up. I firmly believe that Bernie has a handle on the absolute danger that we face as a country if we re-elect this man. And I think that he is not at all afraid to tell people about it. He's not afraid to compel people to do better. And he is not afraid to work to move us to a new place. The one candidate with a diverse audience, right? With an enthusiastic audience, with a plan for all of the people, all the faces in the audience, those at the top of the well and those at the bottom. It's the Sanders campaign. There is excitement in the campaign. There is an enthusiasm. It's almost unbridled enthusiasm. That excitement is going to drive people to the polls. That enthusiasm is going to make sure that we take 10 people with us to vote. I was one of those people that said that Bernie Sanders was too gruff, right? He was just too, there's just something about him that's not, it's curmudgeonly, he's not warm and fuzzy. But his plans are warm and fuzzy. His programs are warm and fuzzy. His programs are targeted at giving a voice to the voiceless, making us see those people who've been forgotten. Until we get to a place in America where everybody matters, we got a fight on our hands. And for that kind of fight, you need somebody who will take it on wholesale. No matter where they are socioeconomically, somebody's got to take this fight to Donald Trump, and I think Bernie Sanders can do that.
Now, I end with Jimmy Dore dunking on Chuck Todd. I'll let you watch the whole clip. I just want to show you a little bit of it. It gets pretty good, and if you really are disgusted by some of the things you've seen Chuck Todd doing, you're going to love this. You're going to watch the whole thing.
So they did a new Wall Street Journal NBC poll, and this was the results. Sanders is ahead of Biden by double digits, ladies and gentlemen.
I still can't believe they released that.
And they released this poll. I mean, I'm not a math surgeon, but I'm pretty sure that's 12 percentage points. And Chuck Todd, watch this.
Guys, Chuck Todd is almost an average level actor. Give him a break.
So watch what he says after that poll was released. Watch this.
Well, did it? Because who's the front runner, right?
Who's the guy winning delegates?
But is he the front runner? He's certainly not getting the president front runner.
Who's the front runner? I'm guessing that guy actually doesn't know. Who's the front runner? I don't know. The front runner would be the guy who's ahead by 12 fucking percentage points, baby. Maybe that would be the front runner. I don't know.
And the problem is,
I don't understand how Bernie is considered a front runner. This is a guy that
I don't understand numbers.
Well, Chuck, numbers are weird. See, the bigger the number is, the bigger the lead. It's almost like magic. It's hard to understand. I guess the same. How is he the front runner? He's the same way. He's the front runner. The same way the guy who writes your payroll check goes. How the fuck does he get paid all this money? He doesn't understand how the guy who's ahead 12 percentage points is the leader. You know, other things Chuck Todd doesn't understand: climate change, what a reporter actually supposed to do, and why boys pee standing up and girls pee sitting down.
It just gets better from there, so I hope you watch it. I also want to remind us all that even though we have a lot of good news about Bernie, we still have a corporate machine, and we have a deep state that is trying to take Bernie out and deny him the nomination, or hamper him severely as he does take office. Only an army of determined people can make sure that Bernie has the power he needs to effect the change that he is envisioning for all of us. I'm still waiting for Bloomberg to try something, and for the CIA to try something, and Mayor Pete to try something. I'm still waiting for all the shoes to drop. Speaking of dropping shoes, this just came in by Eowyn Higgins from Common Dreams. The people versus the oligarch. Bloomberg's planning all-out media assault on Sanders ahead of Super Tuesday. New reporting out Monday reveals that billionaire plutocrat Michael Bloomberg, the former New York City mayor whose record spending has propelled him into the top tier of the 2020 Democratic presidential primary race, is preparing a full-scale, multi-pronged attack on Senator Bernie Sanders with a massive media onslaught against the Democratic frontrunner. According to CNBC, which broke the story, Bloomberg's strategy will involve spending huge sums of his limitless money on digital ads, publishing opposition research, and pushing surrogates to appear on TV and write op-eds against the Vermont senator ahead of Super Tuesday. The Bloomberg machine turns its billions onto Sanders in a first test of what the general election will look like, tweeted the Hill's Sagar and Jetty. Dutch economist and Netherlands Labour Party member Martin Wiedemeyer put it as a struggle between one of the world's richest men and the movement behind the Vermont senator. The people versus the oligarch, said Wiedemeyer. FEC filings show Bloomberg's campaign spent $220 million in ad buys in January alone. The campaign has spent over $500 million total, according to Bloomberg News. That cash flow into the coffers of news networks and newspapers has created an uncomfortable situation for for-profit news outlets who expect to cover the billionaire. The spending appeared to result in more coverage, as Axios reported on February 20th. In the first 6 weeks of his campaign, from early November to mid-December, when he was polling in the low single digits, Bloomberg had 24,754 articles written about him. That compared to 17,259 for Warren, 11,954 for Sanders, 5,242 for Buttigieg, and 2,243 for Klobuchar. CNBC reports the mayor has decided to focus all of his energy and bank account on the Vermont senator through the Super Tuesday contests on March 3rd, where 14 states are set to hold primaries. According to CNBC, on Monday, the Bloomberg campaign attempted to paint Sanders as a past ally of the National Rifle Association, a gun advocacy group that Bloomberg has fought for over a decade. The attacks on Sanders, who has accused Bloomberg of trying to buy the Democratic nomination, will also attempt to highlight negative aspects of his record on race relations, both as a congressman and senator, the sources said. This comes after Sanders, now seen as a Democratic frontrunner, has taken aim at Bloomberg for his support of a policing policy known as stop and frisk that often targeted Black and Latino people. This is a bold move for Bloomberg, given his history of both racist comments and racist policies, said Vox reporter German Lopez of the New Strategy by the billionaire's campaign. The news came 2 days after Joe Lockhart, a longtime Democratic strategist and former press secretary to former President Bill Clinton, in an opinion piece for CNN, called on Bloomberg to take the frontrunner out. Corporate consultant Joe Lockhart yesterday. Bloomberg needs to use the next $400 million in ad spending to attack Sanders. That's from David Sirota's Twitter feed. New York Magazine writer Eric Levitt suggested that a full-bore assault from Bloomberg could be just what the Sanders campaign needs to prepare for a general election contest with the incumbent, President Donald Trump. This will be a good test of the durability of Bernie's strength in polls against Trump, tweeted Levitz. If Bloomberg's wall-to-wall character assassination campaign doesn't erase Bernie's advantage in those polls, no reason to think he can't hold strong in the general. There were so many dirty tricks last time, and they're only getting warmed up this time. So the answer to that is Bernie or bust. BernieOrBust2020.us, BernieOrBust2020.us. BernieOrBust2020.us. Go there and sign the pledge. Get your friends and neighbors to sign the pledge. And that will send an unmistakable warning to the deep state, to the CIA, to the Clinton machine, to Obama world, that we just are not going to take it anymore. We are behind this man. We are behind Bernie Sanders. Not me, us. It isn't about Bernie. It's about all of us working together to make sure that the U.S. government works on behalf of the American people and not on behalf of the oligarchs. Bernie or bust is an effective way to hold their feet to the fire, and it may even prevent violence in Milwaukee. Yes, keep canvassing. Yes, keep the new energy coming in, but also make sure all of your comfortable Democrat friends who could vote for Biden or Warren or Buttigieg or Klobuchar Understand, only Bernie beats Trump, and they need to switch over and vote for Bernie in the primaries if they really want things to change. Otherwise, it's guaranteed that Donald Trump will win again. And then we'll hold you accountable for the Supreme Court picks, we'll hold you accountable for climate change, we'll hold you accountable for not figuring this out soon enough, for being stubborn and holding on to the centrist way of thinking far longer than you should have. We'll remind you again and again.
Get on board the Bernie or Bust train. Come get on board the Bernie or Bust train. Once you hear that clickety-clack, there ain't no time for turning back. Go get on board the Bernie or Bust train.
The preceding episode can be viewed on the YouTube channel Bernie or Bust Television.